She slapped the plate out of his hands just as the fork was about to reach his mouth, and the 4 men behind him stopped smiling. Jack thought his daughter was throwing a tantrum, until she whispered what their lips had just said in Spanish. 30 seconds after you eat, you die. So why were those men still watching him? If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. The crystal chandeliers of the Grandview Manor cast amber reflections across marble floors and silk tablecloths, transforming the dining hall into a cathedral of wealth and whispered power. 10-year-old Amelia Peters sat rigid in her chair, small hands folded tightly in her lap, her vibrant green dress a splash of color against the sea of black suits and evening gowns surrounding her. She hadn't expected this night to feel so formal, so heavy with expectation. Her father, a word still foreign on her tongue, had promised her dinner, not a test. But everything about Jack Goosens was a test, even when he didn't mean it to be. Across the white tablecloth, Jack adjusted his cufflinks with tattooed fingers, his movements precise and controlled. The ink stretched from his knuckles up past his wrists, disappearing beneath the crisp white shirt and perfectly tailored black suit jacket. A silver watch caught the light, expensive, understated, the kind of accessory that whispered rather than shouted. His dark hair was cut sharp, styled with precision, and a small earring glinted when he turned his head to scan the room. He'd chosen this restaurant carefully. Public enough to feel safe, private enough to speak freely. What he hadn't accounted for was how terrifying it might be for a girl who'd only learned his name 3 weeks ago. You can order anything you want, Jack said, his voice gentler than the rumors suggested, though his eyes never stopped moving. Old habits from a life where survival meant constant vigilance. They swept across exits, paused on unfamiliar faces, tracked the positions of his security scattered throughout the room disguised as regular diners. Amelia nodded politely, studying the menu she couldn't focus on. The words blurred together French names for Italian dishes with Spanish ingredients. In any other circumstance, she would have been fascinated. Languages were her escape, her superpower, the one thing that made her feel special in a world that had mostly made her feel small. Her mother had prepared her for this moment, not the fancy restaurant or the expensive clothes Jack had sent over that morning, but for meeting the man who'd left before she was born. The man her mother had forgiven with her dying breath, though Amelia still wasn't sure she could do the same. The chicken is supposed to be good here, Jack offered, then immediately looked like he regretted it. Did 10-year-olds eat chicken? He had no idea. The only children he'd ever interacted with were the sons and daughters of his associates, and those conversations consisted entirely of polite nods at holiday gatherings. That sounds fine, Amelia replied softly, her dark eyes fixed on the gold-rimmed plate in front of her. She had her mother's eyes. Jack had realized the first time they met, that same quiet intelligence, that way of seeing through people without ever appearing to judge. Behind Jack, positioned at strategic points throughout the ornate dining room, 3 of his most trusted men maintained their posts. They wore suits identical to the other wealthy patrons, blending seamlessly into the backdrop of old money and new ambition. One stood near the kitchen entrance. Another lingered by the bar. The third sat alone 2 tables over, nursing an expensive whiskey he wouldn't finish. Jack had survived 20 years in a business where most men didn't last 5. He'd done it by being paranoid, by trusting his instincts, and by never, ever assuming he was safe. Tonight, every instinct he had was focused on the small girl across from him, and it was making him sloppy. A server approached, immaculate in black and white, and took their orders with practiced efficiency. Jack ordered for both of them, then caught himself. "Unless you want something else?" "No, that's okay," Amelia said, and the sadness in her acceptance made Jack's chest tighten. She was used to not having choices, used to accommodating, used to making herself smaller to fit into spaces that weren't designed for her. The server disappeared, and an awkward silence settled between them like fog. Jack cleared his throat. "Your mother, she told you about me?" "Some things." Amelia's fingers traced the edge of her napkin, mostly at the end. When she was really sick, the words hit harder than any bullet Jack had ever taken. He'd missed everything, the pregnancy, the birth, the first words, the first steps. 10 years of a life he could never get back. And worse, he'd missed watching the woman he'd once loved waste away from cancer, dying alone except for the daughter she'd raised in secret. "I didn't know," Jack said quietly, the same thing he'd said at their first meeting, at the funeral where he'd stood at the back like a ghost. If I had known— I know. Amelia interrupted gently, sparing him from having to finish a sentence they both knew ended in nothing but regret. Around them, the restaurant hummed with conversation. Deals were being made over wine. Affairs were being started over dessert. Power was being exchanged in handshakes and knowing glances. The Grandview Manor had been hosting San Francisco's elite for over a century, and its walls had absorbed more secrets than its foundation could probably hold. Amelia's attention drifted, the way it always did when she felt overwhelmed. Her mother used to call it her observation mode, that distant look that meant she was processing the world in ways other people couldn't. She'd pick up fragments of conversation from across rooms, understand movies in languages she'd never studied, correct pronunciation on documentaries about foreign countries she'd never visited. Her gaze settled on 4 men seated diagonally across the dining room. They sat at a round table draped in burgundy cloth, positioned perfectly to have a clear view of Jack's back. Dark suits, like everyone else. Calm expressions, like everyone else. Hands folded professionally on the table, like everyone else, but something was different about them. They weren't eating, though their meals had been delivered. They weren't drinking, though their glasses were full. And strangest of all, they weren't talking, not in the normal sense. Their lips moved with deliberate precision, forming words without sound. A conversation conducted in absolute silence. To anyone else, they might have appeared to be 4 business associates lost in thought between courses, but Amelia noticed something no one else did. They weren't looking at each other when they spoke. They were all watching her father. And the language forming on their lips, clear as daylight to a girl who'd been reading mouths since she learned that words could exist beyond sound, was Spanish. Fluid, practiced, deadly. The first phrase she caught made her stomach drop. Confirmar la dosis. Confirm the dose, 3 weeks earlier. The hospice room smelled like antiseptic and flowers that were trying too hard to mask death. Amelia sat cross-legged on the vinyl chair, pulled close to her mother's bed, homework abandoned on her lap, watching the rise and fall of the thin chest beneath white sheets. Catherine Peters had been beautiful once. Amelia had seen the photos her mother at 25, dark hair cascading over bare shoulders, eyes bright with the kind of hope that didn't know yet how hard the world could be. Now, at 35, she looked 70. Cancer had a way of stealing time like that, compressing decades into months. Baby, her mother whispered, the word barely escaping through dry lips. Come closer. Amelia abandoned her chair and climbed carefully onto the bed, fitting herself into the space between her mother's fragile body and the safety rail. She'd perfected this position over the past 6 months, close enough to hear, careful enough not to hurt. I need to tell you something, Catherine said, her hand finding Amelia's and squeezing with what little strength remained. About your father. Amelia's body went rigid. They'd had this conversation exactly once, when she was 7 and asked why she didn't have a daddy like the other kids at school. Her mother had said he was gone, that it was complicated, that some questions didn't have good answers. Amelia had learned not to ask again. You don't have to, Amelia started, but her mother shook her head slowly. Yes, I do. You deserve to know where you come from, who you come from. Catherine paused, gathering breath like currency she couldn't afford to spend. His name is Jack Goossens. The name meant nothing to Amelia, but the way her mother said it with weight and history and something that might have been love or might have been regret told her it should. I met him when I was 24. Catherine continued, her eyes distant, seeing a past that existed in a different lifetime. I was waitressing at an upscale restaurant downtown. He came in every Thursday, always alone, always ordered the same thing. He was different back then, younger, still dangerous, but he smiled more. Amelia listened, afraid to move, afraid any sound might break whatever spell was allowing her mother to speak. I knew what he was. Everyone did, even if they pretended not to. But he was kind to me, patient. He'd wait hours for my shift to end just so he could walk me home. Made sure I was safe. Her mother's laugh came out as a wheeze. Ironic, really. The most dangerous man I ever met was the one who made me feel safest. What happened? Amelia asked softly. Life happened. His life. There was a war not with guns and soldiers, but with men like him. Organizations fighting for territory, for power, for survival. People were dying. He had to choose between me and staying alive. Catherine's fingers tightened around Amelia's. He chose to stay alive. I don't blame him for that, but Amelia could hear the lie beneath the truth. Her mother did blame him, at least a little. She blamed him for every scraped knee he hadn't bandaged, every parent-teacher conference he hadn't attended, Every birthday candle he hadn't watched her blow out. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after he left. I tried to find him, but men like Jack don't get found unless they want to be. Her mother turned her head, meeting Amelia's eyes with an intensity that felt like desperation. I need you to understand something. Your father isn't a good man. He's done terrible things. He lives in a world that operates by rules you and I can't imagine. Then why are you telling me? Amelia felt tears building behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Because he's still your father. And because you deserve to know yourself, all of yourself. Not just the parts I could give you. Catherine reached up with trembling fingers and touched Amelia's cheek. You have his eyes, you know. That same way of seeing everything, of calculating every angle. You got your gift from him too, I think. That ability to absorb languages, to understand patterns. Jack always knew what people were going to say before they said it. He could read a room like most people read books. Amelia had never thought about her ability that way as something inherited, something that connected her to a ghost she'd never met. I've written everything down, her mother said, gesturing weakly toward the nightstand. His name, last known associates, how to reach him if you ever want to. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you can. Mom, listen to me. Catherine's voice gained sudden strength, the kind that came from somewhere beyond the failing body. When I'm gone, you'll have questions about who you are, where you belong, and I won't be here to answer them. So I'm giving you the choice. I never had to know your father, or not, to forgive him, or not, to understand that people can be both terrible and loving, sometimes at the exact same time. Amelia pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, no longer able to hold back tears. I don't want to know him. I just want you. I know, baby. I know. Her mother's hand stroked Amelia's hair with the mechanical gentleness of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. But you'll change your mind someday. And when you do, you'll have what you need to find him. They stayed like that until the nurse came in to check vitals, until the sun shifted from the window and painted the room in darker shades, until Amelia's tears dried and left salt tracks on her cheeks. Catherine Peters died 4 days later. On a Tuesday morning when the sky was the color of old bruises and rain hammered against hospital windows, she went quietly, in her sleep, holding a photograph of a baby with dark eyes and a future full of questions. Amelia found the letter in her mother's belongings the day after the funeral. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper with a name, 3 phone numbers, and a handwritten note in her mother's deteriorating script. He deserves to know you exist. You deserve to decide if you want him to. It took Amelia 2 weeks to make the call. It took Jack Goosens less than 2 hours to show up at her foster placement, eyes red, hands shaking, looking at her like she was both a miracle and a punishment he'd finally been sentenced to receive. Present day. The words floating across the restaurant reached Amelia in fragments, like puzzle pieces scattered across a table waiting to be assembled. Her heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against her ribs. Confirmar la dosis. Confirm the dose. She'd been 4 years old when her mother first noticed something unusual. They'd been watching a Spanish telenovela in their cramped apartment, her mother's guilty pleasure during late nights when sleep wouldn't come. Amelia had suddenly announced, without prompting, exactly what the characters were saying, not translating, understanding, as if the language had always lived inside her brain, just waiting to be activated. Her mother had tested her after that. French films, German documentaries, Italian cooking shows. Within minutes of exposure, Amelia would begin responding to questions, correcting subtitles, catching nuances that even native speakers sometimes missed. The doctors her mother scraped together money to see had no explanation. One called it hyperlexia. Another suggested savant syndrome. A third simply shrugged and said some brains were wired differently, that Amelia should consider herself lucky. Her mother had a different theory, one she'd shared in those final hospice days. Your father could always read people, not their words, their intentions, like he could see 5 minutes into the future just by watching someone's face. Maybe this is your version of that gift. Now, sitting across from that same father while he studied a menu with the intense focus of someone trying desperately to appear normal, Amelia understood what her mother meant. Jack was trying so hard, too hard. The careful questions, the gentle tone. The way he'd sent over that green dress this morning with a note that simply said, "Thought you might like this. Jay." Not dad, not father, just a letter, because even that was too complicated. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that she was just as terrified, that neither of them knew how to do this, but the words on the lips of the 4 men across the room were building into sentences, and those sentences were building into something that made her blood run cold. El plato, no la bebida. The plate, not the drink. Amelia's eyes fixed on the men with the kind of focus her teachers always praised during reading comprehension tests. She'd learned early that the key to lip reading wasn't just watching mouths, it was understanding rhythm, the way certain sounds shaped the face, how breath moved through consonants and vowels like water through stones. Spanish was particularly elegant that way. The rolled R's required a specific tongue position. The soft G's created a subtle pause in the lower lip. Once you understood the mechanics, the language became visible even in silence. The man on the left, distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair, was speaking now. His lips formed words with the precision of someone who'd delivered this message before. Cuando levante el tenedor. When he lifts the fork, entonces está hecho. Then it's done. Amelia's hands had gone numb. She folded them tighter in her lap, nails digging into her palms hard enough to leave crescents. This couldn't be real. This had to be a misunderstanding. Her ability finally failing her after years of perfect accuracy. Maybe she'd mixed up words. Maybe her fear of this dinner, of this new reality with her father, was making her paranoid. But then the second man responded, and his words carried no ambiguity whatsoever. ¿Cuánto tiempo? How long? 30 segundos después de ingerir. Rápido y silencioso. 30 seconds after ingestion. Fast and silent. Amelia? Jack's voice cut through her panic. You okay? You look pale. She forced her eyes back to him. This man who was trying so desperately to be her father. This stranger whose DNA she carried but whose life remained a mystery. His face showed genuine concern, eyebrows drawn together. Hand halfway across the table like he wanted to reach for her but wasn't sure if he had permission. I'm fine, she heard herself say, the lie automatic. Just nervous. Jack's expression softened. I know this is weird. Hell, it's the weirdest thing I've ever done. And I've done some pretty weird things. He attempted a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But I want you to know you don't have to be nervous around me. I'm not going to. I don't know. Be scary or something. The irony would have been funny if 4 men weren't currently planning his murder. Do you know those men? Amelia asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. The ones at the table behind you? Jack's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The gentle father disappeared, replaced by something harder, sharper, the man her mother had warned her about. His hand moved subtly to his jacket, touching something beneath the fabric. His eyes went distant, not looking at her but through her, calculating, which table? His voice was casual, but Amelia could hear the steel underneath. The round one. 4 men. They're not eating. Jack didn't turn around. Instead, he lifted his water glass and took a slow sip, using the motion to angle himself slightly, catching their reflection in the ornate mirror across the room. Amelia watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. I don't know them, he said carefully, but I know the type. Business associates, probably. Lots of deals get made in places like this. He was lying. Not about recognizing them, she believed he didn't know their faces, but about what they represented. Jack knew exactly what type of men they were because he was the same type, and men like that recognized each other the way wolves recognize their own pack. The third man was speaking now, his lips forming words with casual precision. You see no come. What if he doesn't eat? The fourth man, younger than the others, with a scar barely visible along his jawline, responded with chilling simplicity. Entonces usamos el plan B, pero preferiríamos evitar la escena. Then we use plan B, but we'd prefer to avoid the scene. Servers moved through the space like dancers in a choreographed performance, delivering plates, removing empty glasses, their presence white noise in the background of wealth and power. Amelia watched one approach their table, carrying 2 plates that gleamed under the chandelier light. Chicken for her, steak for Jack. The man with the silver hair was watching intently now, his lips barely moving. Ahí viene, here it comes. The server approached with the practiced grace of someone who'd performed this routine 1,000 times. White gloves held the plates at perfect angles, steam rising in delicate spirals. He smiled professionally as he set Amelia's chicken in front of her first, ladies first, always then turned to deliver Jack's steak. Amelia's eyes were locked on the 4 men. The one with the silver hair leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed but his gaze predatory. The younger one with the scar checked his watch. The third adjusted his tie. The fourth simply stared, unblinking, at Jack's back. None of them were eating. None of them were drinking. They were waiting. Ahora. Now. The word formed on the silver-haired man's lips like a benediction. Jack reached for his fork, his tattooed fingers closing around the handle with the same controlled precision he applied to everything. He'd probably chosen this meal a dozen times before at a dozen different restaurants. Steak, medium rare, with roasted vegetables and garlic butter. Safe. Familiar. Deadly. Thank you, Jack said to the server, who nodded and disappeared back toward the kitchen. Amelia's throat had closed up entirely. Her mind was racing through options, through possibilities, through the terrible mathematics of what happened next. If she said something, would he believe her? If she didn't, would she watch him die? Jack cut into the steak with a knife that gleamed like silver lightning. Blood, or what passed for it in meat, pooled around the blade. He speared a piece, brought it halfway to his mouth. "Amelia, you're not eating," he observed, pausing. "Is something wrong with your food?" The concern in his voice nearly broke her. This man, this dangerous, complicated, trying so hard man was about to die because he'd made the mistake of wanting to know his daughter. 10 segundos. 10 seconds. The lips of the scarred man formed the words with clinical precision. Time crystallized. Amelia could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the green dress her father had bought her, could taste copper in her mouth from biting her tongue. Every language she'd ever absorbed collided in her brain. Spanish, French, English, Italian, German, all of them screaming the same thing. "Stop him! Stop him! Stop him!" Jack lifted the fork higher. The piece of steak glistened with garlic butter and poison, and the end of everything this fragile new relationship might have become. Amelia didn't think. Thinking would have taken too long, would have required explanations she didn't have time to give. Instead, she acted on pure instinct. The same instinct that had helped her mother dodge creditors, avoid dangerous neighborhoods, survive in a world that didn't care whether they made it or not. She lunged across the table. Her small hand connected with the plate, fingers splaying across expensive porcelain. The impact sent the dish spinning through the air in a perfect arc. Steak, vegetables, silverware, all of it suspended for one impossible moment before crashing to the marble floor in an explosion of sound that silenced the entire restaurant. Porcelain shattered. Meat slapped against stone. A fork clattered and spun like a fallen conductor's baton. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Even the pianists in the corner paused mid-note, hands frozen above keys. Jack didn't move. His hand still held the now empty fork, hovering in space where food had been seconds before. His eyes sharp, calculating, dangerous, fixed on Amelia with an intensity that would have terrified her if she weren't already shaking. His security moved instantly. The man near the kitchen entrance was already on his feet, hand inside his jacket. The one at the bar had turned completely, scanning for threats. The third had abandoned his whiskey and was moving toward their table with purpose. But Jack raised his free hand slightly, a gesture so subtle most people wouldn't have noticed. His men froze mid-motion, still alert but waiting for further instruction. The restaurant held its breath. Jack set down his fork with deliberate slowness. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but Amelia heard every word with perfect clarity. "Amelia, what did you just do?" It wasn't a question. It was an assessment, a calculation, a demand for data that would determine what happened next. Amelia's hands were trembling. She pulled them back into her lap, clasping them together so tightly her knuckles went white. Around them, servers were beginning to move, coming to clean up the mess, but Jack waved them away with another subtle gesture. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard and tried again. "I had to." "Had to what?" Jack leaned forward slightly, his face unreadable. "Talk to me. Right now." The four men were watching intently. The silver-haired one's expression had shifted from confident to confused. The scarred one was leaning forward, trying to understand what had just happened. None of them had expected this. Amelia made a choice. She turned her head slightly and looked directly at the four men for the first time. Let them see that she was looking at them, that she knew they were there. Then she turned back to Jack and said, very quietly, in Spanish, "Los cuatro hombres detrás de ti planeaban envenenarte. Dijeron que la comida tenía algo. 30 segundos después de comer, estarías muerto." The four men behind you were planning to poison you. They said the food had something in it. 30 seconds after eating, you'd be dead. Jack's face went absolutely still. Not shocked, shock was too simple an emotion for what crossed his features. It was more like recognition, like pieces of a puzzle he'd been assembling for years suddenly snapping into place. He responded in the same language, his Spanish flawless and fluid. "¿Cómo sabes esto?" "How do you know this?" Amelia took a breath that felt like it might be her last. Porque los vi decirlo. Puedo leer labios. En cualquier idioma. Because I saw them say it. I can read lips. In any language. For 3 seconds, Jack Goosens, a man who'd built an empire on never showing weakness, never revealing surprise, stared at his daughter like she'd just performed a miracle. Then his expression hardened into something Amelia had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. Pure, controlled, absolute focus. He stood slowly, positioning himself between Amelia and the 4 men, his body a wall of protection. His hand moved to his jacket again, and this time she saw what he was touching, something small and hard beneath the fabric. When he spoke, his voice carried across the restaurant with quiet authority. Nobody leaves. The restaurant seemed to contract, as if the walls themselves were drawing closer. Jack remained standing, his body angled to shield Amelia, one hand still resting beneath his jacket. His 3 security men had closed ranks without being told, forming a perimeter that looked casual to untrained eyes but was anything but. The general murmur of confusion among the other diners began to rise. Questions whispered to companions. Nervous glances exchanged. The subtle shifting of chairs as people considered whether this was the kind of situation that required leaving. Jack's lead security man, a broad-shouldered figure with gray at his temples, approached quickly but calmly, bending to speak low near Jack's ear. "Sir, we should move you to—" "No." Jack's voice was quiet but absolute. "We stay. Lock it down." The man hesitated for only a fraction of a second before nodding and speaking into his wrist, where a small communication device was hidden beneath his sleeve. Within moments, Amelia noticed subtle movements throughout the space staff being quietly redirected, exit doors being stationed by men who'd appeared from nowhere, the maître d' speaking in hushed tones to confused patrons near the entrance. Jack finally looked down at Amelia, his expression softer than it had been seconds before, though his eyes still held that dangerous calculation. "I need you to tell me exactly what they said. Every word you remember." Amelia's heart was still hammering, but something about his tone, not dismissive, not patronizing, but genuinely listening, gave her courage. She kept her voice low, speaking in Spanish so the words wouldn't carry beyond their immediate space. "El hombre con el pelo gris dijo confirmar la dosis. Luego dijeron el plato, no la bebida. Cuando el mesero traía la comida, uno dijo cuando levante el tenedor, entonces está hecho. Hablaron sobre 30 segundos. Rápido y silencioso." The man with gray hair said, "Confirm the dose." Then they said the plate, not the drink. When the server was bringing the food, one said when he lifts the fork, then it's done. They talked about 30 seconds. Fast and silent. Jack's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the mirror again, studying the reflection of the 4 men who were now very much aware that something had gone wrong with their plan. They remained seated, but their body language had changed, tension in shoulders, hands moving beneath the table, eyes tracking exits. Did they say anything else? Before or after? Jack asked, still in Spanish. Amelia closed her eyes, replaying the silent conversation in her mind like rewinding a film. Her gift wasn't just about recognizing words, it was about retention, about her brain capturing and storing the visual pattern of language the way other people stored sounds. Uno preguntó, ¿y si no come? Y otro respondió algo sobre un plan B, pero que preferían evitar una escena. One asked, what if he doesn't eat? And another answered something about a plan B, but that they'd prefer to avoid a scene. Jack's expression darkened. Plan B meant they'd come prepared for contingencies, which meant this wasn't opportunistic. This was calculated, professional, the kind of hit that came from someone with resources and patience. He crouched down beside Amelia's chair, bringing himself to her eye level. Up close, she could see the tattoos continued up his neck, intricate patterns that probably meant something to people who understood that language. His eyes, dark and intense, searched her face. I believe you, he said simply. In English now, and the weight of those 3 words nearly made Amelia cry. Do you understand what that means? She nodded, not trusting her voice. It means I'm going to handle this. But I need you to stay exactly where you are and do exactly what I say. Can you do that? Yes, Amelia whispered. Jack stood, his hand finding her shoulder briefly, a touch that was both reassurance and promise. Then he turned to face the restaurant, his entire demeanor shifting into something Amelia recognized from her mother's warnings. This wasn't the man who'd nervously adjusted his cufflinks and asked about chicken. This was Jack Goosens, the man who'd survived 2 decades in a business where survival was the exception. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Gentlemen at table 7, Jack said. his English carrying a slight accent that Amelia hadn't noticed before. "We need to have a conversation." The four men remained motionless. The silver-haired one clearly, the leader maintained his calm expression. But Amelia could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing options, considering possibilities, trying to determine how much Jack actually knew. Jack took 3 steps toward their table, close enough to be threatening without being close enough to be vulnerable. 2 of his security men flanked him at a distance, hands visible but ready. "Here's what's going to happen," Jack continued, his voice conversational, almost friendly. "You're going to tell me who sent you. You're going to tell me what's on that plate. And you're going to tell me why you thought you could touch me in my own city. I'm afraid there's been some misunderstanding," the silver-haired man said smoothly, his English flawless but carrying the rhythm of native Spanish. "We're simply businessmen enjoying my daughter," Jack interrupted, and the word carried such weight that several nearby diners actually flinched. "Speaks 4 languages fluently, including yours. She watched your entire conversation, every single word." The atmosphere shifted instantly. The 4 men's composure cracked, not completely, but enough. The younger one with the scar glanced at Amelia, his eyes widening slightly as he realized the impossible thing that had just happened. The third man's hand moved beneath the table. "Don't," Jack said softly, and 2 more security personnel appeared seemingly from nowhere, positioning themselves behind the 4 men's chairs. "Whatever you're reaching for, it won't help you. Not here, not now." Amelia watched from her seat, her green dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a play she'd never auditioned for. This was her father's world, the one her mother had tried to protect her from, the one that operated by rules she didn't understand. But she'd just saved his life, and in doing so, she'd stepped into that world whether she was ready or not. The silver-haired man seemed to recognize this too. He leaned back slowly, deliberately placing both hands on the table where they could be seen. "Your daughter is quite remarkable." "Yes," Jack said quietly, "she is. Which is why you're going to answer my questions very carefully, because the alternative is something you really don't want to experience." The silver-haired man studied Jack with the calm of someone who'd been in similar situations before, cornered, but not yet defeated. His hands remained visible on the table, fingers splayed across the burgundy cloth like he was reading Braille only he could understand. "Your reputation suggests you're a reasonable man, Mr. Goossens," he said carefully. "Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more. Private? No." Jack's response was immediate and absolute. "We discuss it here. Now. While my daughter can see that nothing happens to me." The implication hung in the air like smoke if they moved locations. Amelia lost her advantage, lost her ability to warn him if more threats emerged. By keeping everything visible, Jack was using her gift as both shield and weapon. Amelia watched the 4 men's faces, her ability working automatically now that she knew what to look for. The scarred one was nervous. His lips twitched with words he wasn't speaking, probably prayers or curses in Spanish. The 3rd and 4th men remained stoic, professional, but their eyes kept darting to the exits that Jack's security had sealed. Only the silver-haired leader maintained complete composure. "Very well," he conceded. "What would you like to know?" "Start with who sent you." Jack's voice remained conversational, but Amelia could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his weight was balanced on the balls of his feet, ready to move in any direction at any instant. "I'm afraid that information isn't something I can provide. Then you've chosen the hard way." Jack made another subtle gesture, and his lead security man produced a phone, tapping it twice before holding it up so the silver-haired man could see the screen. Whatever was displayed there made the man's composure finally crack just slightly, a tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible intake of breath. "That's your daughter," Jack said quietly. "Lucia, isn't it? 17. Student at Sacred Heart Academy. Gets picked up every day at 3:15 by your wife in a silver Mercedes." The man's hands curled into fists on the table. "I don't make threats," Jack continued, his voice dropping lower. "I make promises. You came after me in front of my child. You plan to make her watch me die. So understand this very clearly if you don't give me what I want. Lucia never makes it home from school tomorrow. Your wife never makes it home from the grocery store. Your mother in the assisted living facility in Monterey? She never wakes up from her next nap." Amelia felt ice spread through her chest. This was the man her mother had warned her about, the one who lived by rules that normal people couldn't comprehend. But even as fear prickled her skin, she understood something else. He was doing this for her, because she'd been threatened by proximity, because they'd tried to hurt him in front of her. "You wouldn't," the silver-haired man said, but his voice lacked conviction. Try me. Jack's eyes were black ice. I've done worse for less. Ask anyone who knew me 15 years ago. Ask where those people are now. The silence stretched for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Finally, the man exhaled slowly. Rodrigo Ibarra. The name clearly meant something to Jack. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him, a barely perceptible tightening of the invisible strings that controlled the situation. The Guadalajara connection, Jack said, more to himself than anyone else. He's making a move. Not a move, the silver-haired man corrected carefully, seeming to gain confidence from having said the name aloud, from having crossed a line he could never uncross. A message. You've been expanding too far south, taking territory that isn't yours. He wanted to remind you that borders still matter. By poisoning me at a restaurant, in front of witnesses, by showing you that nowhere is safe, not even here, in your own city, surrounded by your own men. The man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The humiliation was the point. The death was just a bonus. Jack was quiet for a moment, processing. Amelia watched his face carefully, recognizing the same expression she'd worn countless times when trying to solve complex problems. That distant look of someone moving pieces on a board only they could see. What's on the plate? Jack asked. Ricin. Synthesized, concentrated, tasteless. The garlic butter masked what little scent remained. 30 seconds was optimistic, probably closer to 2 minutes before symptoms appeared. 5 before unconsciousness, 10 before death. The silver-haired man spoke clinically, like a doctor discussing a diagnosis. You would have made it to your car, maybe. Collapsed in the parking lot. Dramatic, but not disruptive to the restaurant's business. No blood. No scene. Amelia felt her stomach turn. She looked at the shattered plate on the floor, at the steak she'd knocked away, and realized she'd been seconds away from watching her father die the slowest kind of death, conscious, aware, unable to do anything but feel his body shut down system by system. And plan B? Jack pressed. If you didn't eat, we had a backup. The scarred man spoke for the first time, his voice rough, accented. Car bomb, parking garage, less elegant, more certain. Jack turned slightly, addressing his security without taking his eyes off the 4 men. Check my vehicle, full sweep, and have the plate analyzed. I want confirmation. Already being done, sir, his lead man confirmed. The other restaurant patrons had begun to settle back into uneasy normalcy, confused but choosing to believe whatever story their minds had constructed about the situation. Wealthy people having a private dispute. A business deal gone wrong. Anything but the truth that they'd been eating dinner 20 feet away from an attempted assassination. Jack moved back toward Amelia's table, but positioned himself so he could still watch the 4 men. He crouched down beside her chair again, his voice gentle despite everything that had just happened. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I already heard worse, Amelia said quietly. When they were planning it. Jack's expression softened with something that might have been pride or might have been grief, maybe both. You saved my life tonight. You understand that, right? If you hadn't been watching them, if you hadn't understood. I know. Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. No one has ever done that for me before. 20 minutes later, Jack's security had quietly escorted the 4 men through a service exit. No sirens, no police cars, no questions from other diners who'd returned to their meals and conversations with remarkable speed, as if pretending normalcy could make it true. The restaurant manager, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and sweat beading on his forehead, had personally cleaned the broken porcelain from their table and offered profuse apologies, though whether he was apologizing for the assassination attempt or the disruption to service remained unclear. Jack had slipped him what looked like several $100 bills, and the man had disappeared with the gratitude of someone who'd just been paid to forget everything he'd witnessed. Now, Amelia sat in the back of Jack's car, a black sedan with windows so dark the city lights barely penetrated, watching the streets of San Francisco blur past like a film on fast forward. Jack sat beside her, close but not touching, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. He'd draped his suit jacket over her shoulders when they'd left the restaurant. It swallowed her small frame, the sleeves hanging past her hands, but the weight of it felt like protection, like armor she'd never asked for but desperately needed. Where are we going? Amelia asked quietly. Somewhere safe. Jack's voice was tired in a way she hadn't heard before. Somewhere I can think. The driver, one of Jack's security men, navigated through traffic with practiced ease, taking turns that seemed random but probably weren't. Amelia recognized the pattern from spy movies her mother had loved. checking for tails, avoiding predictable routes, staying in motion until certainty was possible. They drove for 15 minutes in silence before Jack finally spoke again. "I didn't know," he said, staring out his window at the passing city. "About you. About your mother." "That's the truth. I know," Amelia replied. The same thing she'd said at the restaurant, though it felt heavier now, weighted with everything that had happened since. "If I had known." Jack trailed off, then seemed to change direction. "Your mother, Catherine. She was the best person I've ever known, the only truly good thing in my life, and I walked away from her because I was scared. Not of dying, I've never been scared of that, but of getting her killed because of who I am, what I am." Amelia turned to look at him. In the darkness of the car, his profile was sharp edges and shadows. "She forgave you. At the end. She made sure I knew that." Jack's jaw worked like he was chewing words too difficult to swallow. "She shouldn't have. She should have told you I was a monster and let you hate me. It would have been safer for you, but it wouldn't have been true. Wouldn't it?" Jack turned to face her, and in the intermittent glow of streetlights, Amelia could see moisture in his eyes, not quite tears, but close. "You heard what I said back there. About that man's daughter, his wife, his mother. I meant every word. I would have hurt innocent people because he tried to hurt me. That's who I am, Amelia. That's what I do." "You were protecting me," Amelia said softly. "That's different." "Is it?" Jack's voice cracked slightly. "Because I'm not sure anymore. I've spent 20 years telling myself that everything I do, the violence, the threats, the control, it's all necessary, all justified. But then I meet you, and I realize, God, you're just a kid. You should be worried about homework and friends, and whether some boy in your class likes you. Instead, you're reading lips in Spanish to stop assassination attempts. Instead, you're sitting in my car right now, wondering if your father is a good man or a monster." "I don't think you're a monster," Amelia said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "You should, but I don't." She pulled his jacket tighter around her shoulders. "Monsters don't buy green dresses for daughters they're nervous to meet. Monsters don't look sad when they talk about the person they loved. Monsters don't apologize." Jack laughed, a short, broken sound that held no humor. "Your mother raised you to see the best in people, even people who don't deserve it. She raised me to see the truth. And the truth is complicated." They lapsed into silence again as the car navigated into a quieter neighborhood, expensive houses set back from tree-lined streets, the kind of area where old money slept peacefully behind iron gates and security systems. The driver pulled into an underground garage beneath a modern building that looked more like an art installation than residential housing. When the car stopped, Jack didn't immediately move to get out. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like dozens of messages and missed calls. His expression grew darker with each swipe. "What is it?" Amelia asked. "Word travels fast," Jack said grimly. "People know something happened tonight. They know you were there. They know you." He hesitated, choosing words carefully. "They know you're important to me now." The implication settled over Amelia like a second, heavier jacket. By saving Jack's life, by being visible at his side, she'd painted a target on herself that no amount of distance could erase. "Rodrigo Ibarra isn't going to stop," Jack continued, more to himself than to her. "This was just the opening move. He'll come at me again, harder. And now he knows about you. Everyone knows about you. So what do we do?" Amelia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jack looked at her with an expression that combined fierce protectiveness with absolute desperation. "I isolate you. I remove you from anything connected to me. I put you somewhere so safe, so hidden, that no one can touch you. And I make damn sure that what happened tonight never, ever, happens again." "You mean you send me away?" "I mean I keep you alive." Jack's voice broke on the last word. "Because I just found you, Amelia. I just got the chance to know you exist, to hear your voice, to see your face. And I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? I will become the monster everyone thinks I am, if that's what it takes to keep you safe." Amelia felt tears building behind her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of being loved so fiercely by someone she barely knew. "But what if I don't want to be sent away?" she whispered. Jack's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed San Francisco like a glittering circuit board, but heavy curtains could seal the space into a fortress with the touch of a button. The interior was surprisingly sparse modern furniture, minimal decoration, everything positioned with the strategic precision of someone who thought about sightlines and escape routes even in their own home. Amelia stood in the center of the vast living room, still wearing Jack's jacket, feeling small in a space designed for someone who commanded empires. Jack had disappeared into what she assumed was a bedroom, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences on his phone, issuing orders, calling in favors, rebuilding the walls that her existence had somehow torn down. A woman appeared from the kitchen, middle-aged, with kind eyes and capable hands. She introduced herself as Rosa and offered Amelia hot chocolate, which arrived in a mug large enough to require 2 hands to hold. The sweetness was a shock after the bitterness of the evening, and Amelia found herself drinking it faster than she meant to, the warmth spreading through her chest like a small sun. Jack emerged 20 minutes later, his tie loosened, his expression carved from stone. He'd rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing more of the tattoos that covered his forearms, dates, names, symbols that probably told stories Amelia would never fully understand. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said, sitting across from her on a leather chair that probably cost more than a year's rent at the apartment she'd shared with her mother. "I've made arrangements. There's a house in Napa Valley, completely secure, off any registry that could connect it to me. You'll have private tutors, security around the clock, everything you need. A prison," Amelia said quietly. "Protection," Jack corrected, but his voice lacked conviction. "For how long?" Jack's silence was answer enough. "Forever, or as close to forever as his world allowed." "I can't do that," Amelia said, setting down her mug with more force than she intended. "I can't just disappear. I have school. She stopped, realizing how hollow it sounded. She didn't have friends, really. Her mother's death had seen to that, and school was a foster care placement she'd been counting days to escape. "You have a life," Jack finished for her, his tone gentle. "I know. But that life exists because people like Rodrigo Ibarra don't know you exist. Now they do, and they'll use you to hurt me in ways I can't protect against if you're visible." "So, your solution is to make me invisible?" Amelia felt anger rising not at Jack, exactly, but at the situation, at the unfairness of finally having a father only to have him immediately taken away by the same forces that had kept him absent her entire life. "My solution is to keep you breathing," Jack said, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Even if you hate me for it, even if you never forgive me, at least you'll be alive to hate me." Before Amelia could respond, Jack's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted, not quite fear, but close. He answered without greeting. "Talk to me." Amelia couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she could see Jack's face darkening with each passing second. His free hand curled into a fist. A muscle jumped in his jaw. "When?" Pause. "How many?" Another pause. "Handle it. I want names by morning." He ended the call and stood abruptly, moving to the windows despite the danger they represented. For a long moment, he just stared out at the city, his silhouette backlit by millions of lights that seemed suddenly hostile. "What happened?" Amelia asked. Jack didn't turn around. "Someone leaked information. Not just about tonight, about you. Your name, your school, the foster placement, everything. It's on networks I can't control. Being passed between people who trade information like currency." The hot chocolate turned to lead in Amelia's stomach. "What does that mean?" "It means hiding you in Napa won't be enough. They'll find you there. They'll find you anywhere. Because now you're not just my daughter, you're leverage. You're a weakness they can exploit." He finally turned to face her, and Amelia had never seen anyone look so defeated. "I've spent 20 years making sure I had no weaknesses, and then you saved my life. And now you wish I hadn't?" The words came out smaller than Amelia intended. "No." Jack crossed the room quickly, kneeling in front of her chair the way he had at the restaurant. "God, no. I wish I'd been different. I wish I'd stayed with your mother. I wish I'd known about you from the beginning, so I could have built a different life, a safer life. But I can't wish you away, Amelia. I can't wish I hadn't met you, even if it makes everything harder, even if it costs me everything." Tears were streaming down Amelia's face now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. "So what do we do? Just give up? Let them win?" Jack's hands found hers, his tattooed fingers wrapping around her small ones. "We adapt. We make you hard to hurt. Not by hiding you, but by making you smart, aware, prepared. You want to train me? Amelia's voice hitched. Like one of your security people? I want to give you tools, not weapons, tools. Ways to recognize danger before it finds you. Ways to move through the world I live in without becoming a victim of it. Jack's eyes searched hers desperately. I know it's not fair. I know you deserve a normal childhood with normal problems. But that option died the moment you knocked that plate away from me. So now we deal with reality. Will it ever be safe? Amelia asked. Will there ever be a time when I can just be your daughter without all of this? Jack's expression softened with something that looked like grief. I don't know. Maybe. If I can end this war with Ibarra. If I can restructure things so there's separation between what I do and who you are. But it'll take time, and it'll be dangerous. And I can't promise you it'll work. But you'll try? I'll do more than try. Jack's voice hardened with determination. I'll dismantle everyone who thinks they can use you against me. I'll rebuild my entire organization if I have to, whatever it takes. Amelia nodded slowly, understanding settling over her like a blanket, heavy but necessary. This was her life now, not the life her mother had wanted for her. Not the safe, quiet existence she'd imagined during those final hospice days. But maybe it was the life she was meant for, the one where her strange gifts had purpose, where she could be more than just a girl who understood languages. Okay, she said finally. Teach me. Jack pulled her into a hug, awkward and unpracticed, but fierce with emotion. Amelia buried her face in his shoulder and let herself cry properly, mourning the normalcy she'd never really had, and accepting the reality of what came next. When they finally pulled apart, Jack's phone was buzzing again. And again, and again, the war he'd promised was already beginning, messages arriving like artillery shells, each one demanding decisions that would ripple through his organization and beyond. But for now, in this moment, he ignored them all. You should get some sleep, he said gently. Rosa made up the guest room. We'll figure out the details tomorrow. Amelia nodded and stood, Jack's jacket still around her shoulders. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. Jack? Yeah? Thank you. For believing me. About the men. Jack's smile was sad and complicated. You're my daughter. Believing you is the easiest thing I've ever done. Morning light filtered through the penthouse windows in pale gold sheets, revealing a city that looked peaceful from 40 stories up. Amelia woke, disoriented, tangled in sheets that felt like clouds, in a room 3 times the size of the bedroom she'd shared with her mother. For one beautiful moment, she forgot where she was and why, then memory crashed back like cold water, and she remembered everything. She found Jack in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a tablet in one hand and coffee in the other, Rosa moving efficiently around him preparing breakfast. He looked like he hadn't slept same clothes from last night, hair disheveled, shadows under his eyes that made him look older and more human. Morning, he said when he noticed her hovering in the doorway. There's juice, fruit, anything you want. Rosa's making eggs. Amelia slid onto a bar stool, accepting the orange juice Rosa placed in front of her with a grateful smile. She watched Jack scroll through his tablet, his expression darkening with each swipe, and finally asked, Did something else happen? Jack hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her, then seemed to decide she'd earned honesty. 3 of my businesses got hit last night. Not physically, financially. Accounts frozen, shipments seized, permits revoked. Ibarra's putting pressure on my infrastructure, trying to make me react emotionally instead of strategically. Is it working? Normally, no. Jack set down his tablet and met her eyes. But you're here now, and that changes my math. Everything I do has to account for your safety first. That's a handicap he's counting on. So I am a weakness, Amelia said quietly. No. Jack's response was immediate and firm. You're a priority. There's a difference. A weakness is something that makes you vulnerable. A priority is something worth being vulnerable for. Rosa placed plates in front of them perfectly, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh berries arranged like art. Amelia ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind churning through the implications of Jack's words. You said last night you'd teach me, she said between bites. Teach me what, exactly? Jack studied her for a long moment, as if trying to determine how much a 10-year-old could really handle. Finally, he spoke. Situational awareness. How to recognize when you're being watched or followed. How to identify exit routes in any space you enter. Basic counter-surveillance techniques. Nothing violent, just ways to move through the world with your eyes open. Like what you do. At the restaurant, the way you were always scanning. Exactly like that. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being prepared. Jack paused, then added, "Your gift, the language thing, it's already a weapon in the right circumstances. Last night proved that. But if we sharpen the rest of your awareness to match, you become something different. Not a target, not a liability. A person who can't be easily touched." Amelia felt something stir in her chest. Not quite excitement, but not fear either. Purpose. Maybe. Or the beginning of it. When do we start? Now, if you want. Jack gestured around the penthouse. "Tell me about this space. What do you notice?" Amelia looked around. Really looked. Trying to see beyond expensive furniture and clean lines. The windows are thick. Bulletproof, probably. The front door has 3 locks I can see, and probably more I can't. The furniture is positioned so you can see both the elevator and the stairwell entrance from anywhere in the room. Jack's eyebrows rose slightly. Good. What else? Rosa keeps her phone in her left pocket and checks it every few minutes. She's getting updates, probably from your security. Amelia turned to study the older woman, who smiled encouragingly. And she's armed. Small caliber, ankle holster, right leg. Rosa actually laughed, reaching down to briefly reveal the small pistol strapped above her boot. "Sharp eyes, pequeña." "Very sharp," Jack agreed, and Amelia heard pride in his voice, real, uncomplicated pride. "Now, if someone came through that elevator right now with bad intentions, what would you do?" Amelia's eyes traced potential paths. "Kitchen has a service exit, or the stairwell, but that's exposed. Or," she pointed to a decorative panel on the wall. "That's not actually decoration, is it? That's a panic room." Jack's smile was genuine now, transforming his face into something younger, less burdened. "You got all that from just looking?" "I've been watching people my whole life," Amelia said, "trying to understand them. Languages are just one part of it. Body language, positioning, what people choose to pay attention to. It all tells you things if you know how to listen." "Then you're already halfway there," Jack said. "We just need to formalize it, turn instinct into skill." They spent the next 2 hours moving through practical exercises. Jack had her memorize the faces of his known enemies from photographs, teaching her to recognize micro-expressions that indicated deception or threat. He walked her through basic counter-surveillance, how to use reflections to check if you're being followed, how to vary your route, how to identify choke points and avoid them. Rosa joined them, demonstrating how to move through crowds efficiently, how to blend without making yourself memorable, how to use your size as an advantage rather than a weakness because people underestimated children. It should have been overwhelming. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Amelia found herself fascinated, absorbing information the way she absorbed languages naturally, completely, like her brain had been waiting for exactly this kind of education. "You're a natural," Jack said during a break, both of them sitting on the floor with Rosa's tablet displaying city maps. "Your mother, did she teach you any of this?" "Not like this. But she taught me to be aware, to notice when landlords were lying about fixing things, to recognize when bill collectors were getting aggressive, to understand when we needed to move neighborhoods because ours was getting dangerous." Amelia traced a route on the map. "She was teaching me survival, just different rules." "Same rules," Jack corrected gently. "Different context. Survival is survival, whether you're dodging eviction or assassination attempts. The tactics change, but the principle stays the same. Stay aware, stay ahead, stay alive." Jack's phone buzzed the 5th time that hour. He ignored it again, but Amelia could see the tension building in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched with each interruption. "You need to handle that," she said. "Handle whatever's happening with your business. I'll be okay here. You sure?" "I'm sure." And surprisingly, she was. The fear from last night had transformed into something else. Determination, maybe, or acceptance. She was Jack Goossens's daughter, and that came with realities she couldn't change, but she could choose how to face them. Jack stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. Before he could walk away, Amelia spoke again. "Jack, when this is over, when it's safe, will you teach me more? Not just about staying alive, but about you? About where I come from?" Jack's expression softened completely. "Yeah, kid. I'll teach you everything. The good, the bad, the complicated, all of it. I promise." He disappeared into his office, and Amelia heard his voice shift into the hard, commanding tone of someone who ran an empire. But here, with her, he'd been just a father trying to keep his daughter safe. And somehow, that made all the difference. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors, 3 men in expensive suits, who moved with the careful precision of people who understood violence intimately. Jack introduced them as his inner circle, the lieutenants who'd kept his organization running for over a decade. They nodded respectfully to Amelia but didn't speak to her directly, treating her presence like classified information that required careful handling. They gathered around Jack's dining table, a massive slab of dark wood that could have hosted a small army, spreading documents and tablets across its surface, like planning a siege. Amelia had been told to stay in her room, but the door didn't fully close, and her hearing had always been exceptional. "Ibarra's making his move," one lieutenant said, his voice carrying the rough edges of too many cigarettes. "He's consolidated support from the Tijuana network and the Southern California ports. He's not just coming after your territory, he wants your legitimacy." "Let him try," Jack replied, his tone ice cold. "What's our position? Strong in the north, vulnerable in the south. He's got numbers, but we've got infrastructure. Long game favors us, but short term." The lieutenant trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. "Short term we bleed," Jack finished. "How bad? Manageable. Unless he escalates." "He'll escalate. The restaurant proved that." Jack's voice carried certainty. "This isn't about business anymore. It's personal. He wants to humiliate me, and he's willing to risk war to do it." Another lieutenant spoke up, younger, with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "Then we hit back. Hard. Show him the cost of coming at you." "And make myself predictable?" Jack's response was immediate. "That's what he wants. He wants me acting emotionally, making mistakes. We don't give him that satisfaction." "So what do we do?" the rough-voiced lieutenant asked. "Sit here and take hits?" "We adapt." Jack's voice carried new weight. "We restructure. Make the organization less dependent on me personally. Create layers, separation, delegation. If I'm the target, we remove me as a single point of failure." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. What Jack was suggesting went against decades of tradition, against the very structure that kept organizations like his functioning. Power centralized, control absolute. To distribute that control was to risk everything. "You're serious," the younger lieutenant said. Not quite a question. "Completely. I'm building something here, something that matters more than territory or reputation." Jack paused, and Amelia knew without seeing that he was thinking about her. "And I won't let it get destroyed because I'm too proud to evolve." "The others won't like it," Rough Voice warned. "Distributed power means distributed loyalty. It opens you up to betrayal. Then we'll deal with betrayal when it comes. But I'd rather face internal threats I can prepare for than external ones that use the people I love as weapons." The meeting continued for another hour. Details about restructuring, about making peace with certain factions while isolating others, about the delicate balance between showing strength and showing wisdom. Amelia listened to all of it, absorbing the complexity of her father's world, understanding for the first time just how many lives depended on the decisions he made. When the lieutenants finally left, Jack found Amelia sitting on her bed, pretending to read a book Rosa had provided. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "You heard all that," he said. "Not an accusation, just a statement." "I did," Amelia admitted. "Are you really going to change everything? Because of me?" Jack entered the room and sat carefully on the edge of the bed, the mattress barely dipping under his weight. "Not because of you. For you. There's a difference. Because of you suggests you're a problem to be solved. For you means you're a reason to be better. But what if it doesn't work? What if Ibarra keeps coming anyway? Then I'll handle it, but not the way I would have before." Jack looked at her directly, his dark eyes intense but no longer cold. "Before you, I would have burned everything, started a war that would have cost hundreds of lives, destroyed families, left scars across the entire West Coast. And I would have won, eventually, but at a cost that wouldn't have bothered me because I had nothing to lose. And now I have everything to lose. So I fight smarter, not harder. I make choices that keep you safe even if they make me look weak. I sacrifice reputation for reality." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and squeezed her shoulder gently. "That's what having a daughter means. Everything changes. Every calculation includes you. Every risk gets measured against whether it brings you closer to danger." Amelia felt tears building again, but they were different from last night's fear. These were tears of something else belonging, maybe. or the first fragile roots of love taking hold in soil that had seemed too damaged to grow anything. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry that saving your life made everything harder." "Don't." Jack's voice was fierce. "Don't ever apologize for that. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to be more than what I am. That's not a burden. That's a gift." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the city spreading beneath them through the window, millions of lives intersecting in patterns too complex to ever fully understand. Amelia thought about her mother, about what she would think of this moment, this unlikely connection forming between daughter and father. She thought her mother would be happy. Worried, but happy. "Jack?" Amelia said quietly. "What happens next? After you restructure everything? After things settle down?" Jack considered the question carefully. "We figure it out together. Maybe you go back to school a different one, safer. Maybe we have regular dinners, less dramatic than last night. Maybe I teach you about the business, the parts that aren't dangerous, so you understand where you come from. Maybe we just learn how to be a family, whatever that looks like for people like us." "People like us," Amelia repeated, testing the phrase. "I like that. Like we're a team. We are a team. Smallest, strangest team I've ever been part of, but definitely a team." Jack stood, his joints creaking slightly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning what comes next. Not just survival, but actual living." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Amelia, thank you for giving me a second chance, for not being afraid of me, for seeing something in me worth saving. You're my dad," Amelia said simply. "That's all that matters." After he left, Amelia lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of Jack's jacket still draped over a nearby chair. Outside, the city glittered with possibilities, some dangerous, some beautiful, all uncertain. But for the first time since her mother died, Amelia didn't feel alone in facing them. She had her gift. She had her awareness. And most importantly, she had a father who'd chosen her over everything he'd built across 20 years of blood and power. That was enough. For now, it was more than enough. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.
Бедному можно сказать: "А кто ты без денег?" А он скажет: "А я без денег хороший там папа, там, и хороший там друг, товарищ, да, но у меня нету денег". И вот тут вопрос возникает о том, что и этому человеку нужны, по сути, и дав ему, вот тут интересно, и дав ему в моменте огромное количество денег, останется ли он таким же? Либо это все поменяет его. Или у бедного, к примеру, или у богатого забери все деньги, сможет ли он найти себе друзей, там, хорошую жену, стать там, не знаю, хорошим отцом? Ну, вот такие вот интересные вопросы на самом деле. И, наверное, вот для бедных людей тоже, как бедных, я имею в виду финансово, которые, ну, зависимые финансово сильно. Богатые — это независимые финансово. Да, им пофигу вообще, там, что сколько стоит, не считают ни копейки. И вот бедный человек, что может держать его в морально нормальном состоянии? Это, наверное, возможно, поддержка семьи, поддержка друзей. Ну, как я и говорил, к примеру, как у меня есть сосед, но вот у него есть поддержка родителей, да, поддержка друзей. Но он не вылазит из ситуации, в той, в которую залез. И получается, что у нас получается? Что это тоже не важно? Что даже имея поддержку своих родственников, друзей, ты не вылезешь из дизморали, из такого образа жизни? Получается, нет. Так что же тогда? Алло.
Алло,
Алло.
ты еще не заезжал?
Вот я еду, сейчас заеду скоро.
Не едь туда, все, оплата пришла.
Все, хорошо, давай. Вот, как я и говорю, можно... Так что же для человека самое главное получается? Чтобы держаться на плаву. Многих же не останавливают, дети не останавливают, да, которые имеются. Да, любовь к детям тоже их не останавливает. Да, как-то поддержка, наверное, вот если так разобраться, наверное, самое внутреннее, наверное, если вот так вот разобраться, прямо углубиться, возможно, поддержка жены, типа, или девушки, если прям вот глубоко внутрь копнуть, тоже на самом деле не всегда. Но если у тебя есть девушка и жена, ты на ежедневной основе с ней общаешься, с ней видишься. Ты единственный человек, по сути, да, который, наверное, важен в твоей жизни, который может дать дельный типа совет. И почему же тогда люди, наверное, расходятся, разъезжаются, перестают быть вместе, раз это так важно? Наверное, из-за того, что вот нету вот этого как раз таки, наверное, какого-то отдельного совета, какой-то внутреннего чувства нужности этому человеку. Да, люди расходятся, потому что ты не получаешь каких-то тех чувств, которых ты нигде больше не получишь. Не можешь получить. Ни за деньги, ни еще как-либо. И когда у тебя, наверное, нету этого чувства внутреннего, люди, наверное, потом расходятся. И потом люди, многие, наверное, попадают вот в эти депрессии. Помимо финансовых проблем, нереализованности, да, и еще семейные неудачи какие-то добавляются. Наверное, это было всегда у людей. Просто раньше, наверное, этому не придавали такой огласки, возможно. Да и раньше было чуть, наверное, возможно, проще. Я говорю, человеку надо было всего лишь выполнять свои функции какие-то. Да? Как бы человек мог сходить там, отработать, к примеру, на заводе, прийти, и он был спокоен был уже. Что все, типа, он сделал все, что от него требуется. В наше же время ты этого не можешь сделать. И получается, помимо того, что вот оно от этого-то и все исходит на самом деле. Семьи от этого-то и рушатся. Да, от того, что когда ты понимаешь о том, что твоя нереализация в жизни, понятно, что это твоя вина, да, какая-то в чем-то, что ты не смог себя найти. И помимо этого, если у тебя еще нет какой-то внутренней поддержки в твоей семье, то как бы это все и приводит к тому, что люди расходятся. И оба, наверное, остаются в какой-то такой дизморали оба. Да, в какой-то, наверное, все равно внутренней депрессии. Короче, и как же избежать этого всего, наверное, главный вопрос. Тут, наверное, несколько вариантов. В наше время, наверное, это наверное, не опускать руки никогда, в первую очередь. если бы взять со стороны мужчины, да, то в наше время, наверное, главное не то, типа, сколько он зарабатывает, а главное, чтобы, наверное, не опускать руки. Потому что работа примерно плюс-минус вся одинаковая. Плюс-минус везде она одинаково оплачивается. Да, но хотеть и стараться чего-то большего и не опускать руки, наверное, это одно из самых главных вещей. Да, стараться и хотеть чего-то большего. И тут вступает, наверное, вот это вот как раз таки еще и семейная поддержка, да, любовь, нежность, да, какая-то, поддержка словесная. И это, наверное, все сохраняет в тебе мотивацию к стремлению, к жизни, к желанию добиться чего-то большего. Можно не хотеть ничего на самом деле, да, устроиться в какую-то организацию, зарабатывать 100 тысяч рублей, но тебе этих денег явно не будет хватать. И в оконцове ты опять-таки поймаешь, наверное, эту дезмораль. Потому что все оно по кругу крутится. И потом люди на СВО уходят, умирают за 5-7 миллионов рублей. И я не думаю, что это кого-то осчастливит. Ну, во всяком случае, данного человека точно это не осчастливит. Говоря именно о поддержке, что значит поддержка? Как она выглядит, поддержка эта семейная? Наверное, у каждого это, наверное, по-разному немного. В любом случае, каждому человеку нужны какие-то разные вещи от другого человека. Да? Всегда же отношения — это взаимный обмен чем-то. Да? И когда люди от друг друга этот взаимный обмен получают, будь то, это могут быть разные вещи.